Family Guy has been on the air since January of 1999. That is over 25 years of episodes, over 447 episodes of a single animated family doing increasingly unhinged things in a fictional town called Quahog, Rhode Island. And in that time, every major character on this show has crossed a line. Not just a "that was kind of messed up" line. A real, genuine, deeply disturbing line that when you strip away the laugh track and the cutaway gags makes you sit with something uncomfortable. This video is going to rank every major Family Guy character by the single most evil thing they have ever done. We are going from the least evil to the most evil, and by the time we get to the end of this list, the character sitting at number 1 will make everything else look like a noise complaint. Some of these moments you will remember immediately. Some of them you might have blocked out because the show played them off as a joke. But the thing about Family Guy is that it has always hidden genuinely dark writing underneath layers of absurdist comedy. And when you peel those layers back, what you find is a cast of characters who have collectively committed enough crimes to fill a prison the size of Rhode Island itself. So get comfortable. We are going to be here for a while, and we are starting with someone who most people would not even think to put on an evil list. Now, before we get into it, a quick word on how this ranking works. We are not just looking at who caused the most property damage or who has the highest body count. If that were the criteria, Peter would win by default because the man has destroyed more buildings than a hurricane. Instead, we are looking at the single most evil act each character has committed, and we are judging that act by 3 things. First, intent. Did they know what they were doing? Second, impact. How much harm did it cause? And third, what it reveals about who they really are underneath the comedy. Because Family Guy is a show that uses humour as a disguise. The jokes distract you from the fact that these characters are doing genuinely terrible things. And once you stop laughing long enough to really look at what happened, some of these moments are hard to shake. We are covering 9 characters total. Chris Griffin, Brian Griffin, Meg Griffin, Ernie the Giant Chicken, Glenn Quagmire, Lois Griffin, Peter Griffin, Carter Pewterschmidt, and Stewie Griffin. Each one has earned their spot, and the order might surprise you, but he earned his spot. First up, Chris Griffin. Now, before anyone says Chris is just dumb, he is not evil, hear me out. Because there is a difference between being stupid and being dangerous, and Chris manages to land in a weird grey area between the two that is honestly more unsettling than people give it credit for. Chris Griffin is the middle child of the Griffin family. He has been voiced by Seth Green since the very first episode aired back in 1999, and throughout the entire run of the show, he has been defined by one primary trait. He is spectacularly, almost supernaturally unintelligent. We are talking about a teenager who cannot distinguish between a toaster and a computer, a kid who genuinely believes Scooby-Doo said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." A boy who, when his father smacks him in the back of the head and tells him a lamp did it, immediately tackles the lamp and starts wrestling it on the floor. That is not just being a bad student. That is operating on a wavelength that the rest of humanity cannot even receive. But Chris's most evil moment does not come from his stupidity. It comes from something much darker, something that reveals an absence, not of intelligence, but of basic moral instinct. It happens in Season 13, Episode 7. The episode is called Stewie, Chris and Brian's Excellent Adventure. And the premise is that Stewie and Brian decide to help Chris study for a history test by using Stewie's time machine. Instead of flashcards, they take Chris on a tour of actual history. They visit real events, they meet real historical figures, and along the way, the audience and Chris's 2 companions discover something deeply troubling about the way Chris processes the world. When Stewie quizzes Chris on who said the famous line, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself," Chris answers with complete confidence. Scooby-Doo, not Franklin D. Roosevelt. Scooby-Doo. the cartoon dog who runs away from ghosts. Chris has placed a fictional character and one of the most important American presidents on the exact same level of legitimacy in his mind. There is no distinction between what is real and what is a cartoon. When they witness the Titanic sinking in real time, Chris watches hundreds of people die in freezing water, and his response is, "This would make a great movie." He does not understand that this is a real historical tragedy. He does not know that the Titanic disaster already has multiple films made about it, and he does not appear to have any emotional response to the mass death unfolding right in front of him. When Stewie tells Chris he is dreaming so that Chris will not learn about the time machine, Chris, believing there are no consequences, cuts off his own hand. Think about that for a second. Even if someone truly believed they were dreaming, the instinct for self-preservation should kick in before you take a sharp object to your own wrist. But Chris does not have that instinct. His brain does not send the signal that says, "This will hurt, do not do this." But all of that is still in the territory of profound stupidity. Dangerous stupidity, sure, but not evil. Here is the moment that earns Chris his spot on this list. During the time travel adventure, Brian ends up bludgeoning Ivan Pavlov to death with one of Pavlov's own bells. It is played as dark comedy, and it is already a wild moment in itself. But Chris's reaction is what makes it disturbing. Chris does not recoil, he does not look confused or scared, he looks excited, and then he says it. "I want to kill more scientists." Not "that was scary," not "what just happened," not even silence. Chris watched a man get beaten to death, and his immediate, enthusiastic, voluntary reaction was that he wanted to do it again. He wanted more of it. He wanted to participate. Now, you could argue that Chris does not truly understand what death means. You could argue that his cognitive limitations are so severe that he processes a man being killed the same way he might process a cartoon character getting hit with an anvil. And that is probably true. But that is exactly what makes this moment his most evil act. It is not calculated evil. It is not evil born from trauma or greed or obsession. It is the complete absence of a moral compass. Chris sees violence, real violence against a real person, and his brain does not produce a single signal that says, "This is wrong." Instead, it produces excitement, eagerness, a desire for more. In almost any other context, if a teenager watched someone get killed and immediately asked to kill someone else, that would not be played for laughs. That would be the opening act of a very different kind of story. And this is not the only evidence of Chris operating without moral guardrails. In the episode, Boopa Dee Bappa Dee from season 12, when the Griffin family is in Italy and Chris needs to look up the word success, he runs to the kitchen and tries to use the toaster as a computer. Both he and Peter fully commit to the belief that this kitchen appliance, which has no screen, no keyboard, and no function beyond heating bread, is a device capable of providing them with information. This goes beyond not knowing how technology works. This suggests that Chris genuinely cannot identify the basic function of common household items. His understanding of reality is so fundamentally broken that he cannot tell the difference between a toaster and a computer. In When You Wish Upon a Weinstein from season 3, Peter smacks Chris in the back of the head and immediately tells him the lamp did it. And Chris, without a millisecond of hesitation, tackles the lamp and begins fighting it. He does not question why a lamp would attack him. He does not look at his father, who is standing right there. He takes the information at face value and physically assaults an inanimate object. This is a human being who cannot distinguish between what is possible and what is impossible. But even with all of this evidence, Chris still ranks as the least evil character on this list. And here is why. He is not malicious. Chris does not set out to hurt people. His desire to kill more scientists is not born from hatred or revenge. It comes from a place so cognitively disconnected that he probably cannot differentiate between that statement and saying he wants to ride more roller coasters. The impulse is the same in his brain. Something was exciting. He wants more of it. He is not delusional in the way that genuinely crazy characters are. Chris does not create elaborate false realities. He does not plot or scheme. He simply accepts whatever version of reality is presented to him, no matter how absurd. When someone tells him a lamp attacked him, that becomes his reality. When he thinks he is dreaming, the normal rules of self-preservation vanish. He is not building a false world. He is just living in whatever world someone else constructs for him. He can still function. Barely. Chris goes to school. He has friends, sort of. He manages basic daily activities with varying degrees of success. He is not so far gone that he cannot navigate the world at all. And most importantly, when you stack Chris against the rest of his family, his brand of dysfunction looks almost quaint. His baby brother Stewie builds time machines, plots to kill their mother, and has displayed genuine psychopathic tendencies across hundreds of episodes. His sister Meg has kidnapped people and committed armed robbery. His father Peter has caused destruction on a scale that would qualify as a natural disaster in most states. His mother Lois has gone on crime sprees and had complete psychological breaks. Even Brian, the family dog, is capable of manipulation and cruelty that Chris simply lacks the intelligence to pull off. Chris is too stupid to be manipulative. He is too cognitively limited to scheme. He does not have the processing power to be truly evil in the way that the other characters on this list are. But he does have that moment. That one moment where he watched a man die and said he wanted more. And in a show where everyone is some shade of terrible, that moment of enthusiastic, instinctive bloodlust is what puts Chris Griffin at the starting line of this ranking. Throughout the entire run of Family Guy, Chris has remained remarkably consistent in his stupidity. While other characters have been pushed further and further into exaggerated versions of their original traits, a process fans call Flanderization, Chris started out dumb and stayed dumb. This consistency actually makes him one of the more predictable characters on the show. You always know what you're getting with Chris. There will be no sudden genius moments. There will be no character development arcs that transform him into someone competent. He is who he is. And who he is, apparently, includes someone capable of watching murder and asking for an encore. The show has occasionally given Chris moments of surprising insight or talent. He has shown artistic ability with drawing. He has had flashes of emotional intelligence that surpass his intellectual intelligence. But these moments are rare exceptions that prove the rule. Chris Griffin operates at a cognitive level that makes everyday tasks challenging, and that same cognitive level means he processes violence and death with the same emotional complexity that most people bring to watching someone pop bubble wrap. There is a conversation to be had about whether Chris is actually responsible for his reactions, if he genuinely cannot process what death means, if his brain treats a real person being killed the same way it treats a cartoon character being flattened by a piano, then is his enthusiasm for killing scientists truly evil? Or is it something closer to a reflex, a response produced by a brain that does not have the software to generate empathy? This is what makes Chris such a fascinating starting point for this ranking. He forces us to define what evil actually means. Is it about intent? Because Chris has no intent. Is it about awareness? Because Chris has almost none. Is it about the act itself, regardless of the person committing it? Because the act, wanting to kill people after watching someone die, is objectively horrifying no matter who says it. He is not evil in the traditional sense. He is something almost more unsettling. He is a teenager with the cognitive capacity of a small child who has absolutely no internal mechanism telling him that violence is wrong. And in the world of Family Guy, where characters with far more intelligence and agency will do far worse things, Chris stands out as a reminder that evil does not always come from a dark place. Sometimes it comes from no place at all, just an empty space where a conscience should be. And if Chris, the least evil character on this list, has a moment that disturbing, imagine what is coming next. If you are enjoying this breakdown so far, make sure to subscribe. because we are just getting started. Moving on. We have Brian Griffin. Brian Griffin is the family dog who walks upright, drinks martinis, drives a Prius, and genuinely believes he is the smartest person in every room he enters. He has been voiced by Seth MacFarlane since the show premiered, and for over 2 decades he has served as the Griffin family's resident intellectual, or at least that is what he wants everyone to think. Because Brian Griffin is not smart, he is not cultured, he is not the moral compass he pretends to be. Brian is a fraud, a deeply insecure alcoholic fraud who constructs an entire persona around being better than everyone else, and then crumbles the moment anyone calls him on it. And his most evil act is not something violent, it is not something criminal, it is something much quieter and much crueler. It is the deliberate emotional manipulation of the most vulnerable person in his household. It happens in Season 5, Episode 8. The episode is called Barely Legal, and it starts with something that seems almost sweet. Meg Griffin cannot find a date to her junior prom. She has asked everyone. Nobody will go with her. This is consistent with how the show has always treated Meg. She is the punching bag, the one everyone ignores, mocks, and dismisses. By this point in the series, Meg has endured years of psychological abuse from her father, her mother, her siblings, and the entire town of Quahog. Brian feels sorry for her. He agrees to take Meg to prom, and at the dance, Brian gets drunk and kisses her. Now on the surface, this might look like a mistake. A guy has too much to drink and does something he regrets. That happens. People do dumb things when they are impaired. But here is what makes this moment evil rather than just stupid. Brian knows exactly who Meg is. He has lived in this house for years. He has watched her get rejected, humiliated, and psychologically broken by everyone around her. He knows that Meg is so starved for any scrap of affection, any tiny indication that someone cares about her, that she will latch onto the smallest gesture like a life raft. Brian knows all of this because he is supposed to be the perceptive one. He is supposed to be the one who understands people, and he kissed her anyway. For Meg, that kiss was not a drunken accident. That kiss was the first time in her entire life that someone made her feel like she mattered. Someone chose her. Someone, even for a single moment, treated her like she was worth something. After years of being told to shut up, being ignored at dinner, being physically pushed away by her own father, someone finally showed her affection. The next morning, Meg is understandably excited. She calls Brian cutie. She asks him to get coffee. She does the "who is a good boy" routine that people do with dogs. And Brian responds positively at first. He plays along. He says, "Me, I am a good boy." And then he realizes what he has done. And he does not just reject her gently. He does not sit her down and explain that it was a mistake, that he was drunk, that he is sorry he gave her the wrong impression. Brian brings in Garrett Morris from Saturday Night Live to literally yell his rejection at Meg. The message is screamed at her. "We are not boyfriend and girlfriend. I will never be attracted to you." Think about what that does to someone like Meg. The one moment of affection she has ever experienced. And it is not just taken away. It is violently, publicly, humiliatingly ripped from her while a stranger screams in her face. Meg's response is to snap. She bakes a pie and puts her own hair in it. She makes Brian eat it while saying genuinely disturbing things. "My hair is in the pie, Brian, and now it is inside of you. Part of me is inside of you, Brian. Do you feel me inside of you?" And then she escalates further. Chris tells Lois that he saw Meg tie up Brian, put him in the trunk of a car, and drive away. Meg has kidnapped Brian and is holding him hostage in a hotel room. The family eventually finds them and rescues Brian. Lois has to physically intervene. The episode ends and everyone moves on. But here is the thing nobody talks about. Everything Meg does in this episode, the hair pie, the kidnapping, the hostage situation, all of it is a direct, traceable consequence of Brian's actions. Brian created this. He took a vulnerable, emotionally starving teenager, gave her the one thing she desperately needed, and then snatched it away in the most brutal way possible. Meg did not snap because she is crazy. Meg snapped because Brian made her believe, for one single moment, that she was loved, and then told her she never would be. And this was not the only time Brian revealed who he really is. In Season 8, Episode 7, Jerome is the New Black, we get what might be the most devastating character assassination in the history of the show. Brian asks Quagmire, of all people, why he does not like him, and Quagmire tells him. In detail, Quagmire says Brian constantly hits on Lois, despite the fact that Peter is his best friend. Peter gives Brian food, a roof over his head, and literally saved his life. And Brian repays him by trying to steal his wife. Quagmire says Brian never pays for anything. He always says, "I will get you next time," but next time never comes. Quagmire says Brian pretends to love women for their minds, but really he just dates superficial women like everyone else. The difference is that Quagmire admits he is shallow. Brian lies about it. Brian buys girls' copies of Catcher in the Rye and pretends he understands deep literature, but his understanding of the book is at a 7th grade level. Quagmire calls Holden Caulfield a spoiled brat and says, "That is why you like him so much. He is you." Quagmire calls out Brian's politics. Brian talks about helping the homeless but never actually does anything. Quagmire says he personally works at the soup kitchen. He has never seen Brian there. "You want to help? Grab a ladle." And then the famous line. "And by the way, driving a Prius does not make you Jesus Christ." Quagmire says Brian does not believe in religion and looks down on people who do, despite having failed college twice, being a deadbeat father who never sees his son, and being, ultimately, nothing more than a sad, alcoholic bore. Brian has no comeback. He sits there and takes it, because everything Quagmire said is true. And in Season 9, Episode 6, Brian writes a bestseller. We see what happens when Brian finally gets what he has always wanted. Success. His serious novel, Faster Than the Speed of Love, is a catastrophic failure. The publisher returns all unsold copies. There are 300 boxes. Stewie discovers that the publisher used shredded copies of Brian's book as packing material for more copies of Brian's book. Nobody wanted it. Brian is crushed. But then he decides to write a cheap self-help book to prove he can crap one of those out in a night, and it becomes a massive hit. Brian gets famous. He gets on Real Time with Bill Maher, and on national television, the guests systematically dismantle his book. They point out that it does not actually help anyone. Bill Maher notes that 2 of the book's 3 points are the same point. Arianna Huffington tells him where to go. Brian is exposed as a fraud in front of millions of people, and then in Season 13, Episode 8, Our Idiot Brian, the final pillar of Brian's identity gets demolished. Meg needs someone to take her SAT for her, and Brian agrees because he believes he is smart. He takes the test, he scores a 1,000 out of 2,400. That is terrible. Brian is not smart. He was never smart. His entire identity was built on a lie. Brian falls into a genuine depression over this. His whole sense of self has collapsed. Peter sees an opportunity and decides to teach Brian how to be dumb and happy instead of smart and miserable. Peter tells him, "It is fun being stupid. You do not got to worry about nothing. You do not got to read books and you never die." Brian corrects him. Peter responds, "How would you know, stupid?" Chris and Stewie laugh. The episode shows Brian leaning into stupidity. He starts using phrases like awesome sauce and bazinga. He gets a nosebleed and Peter says, "Gross, he is getting his nose period." Brian becomes simpler, happier, and more popular. He makes friends easily. He sleeps well. He dates women who actually like him instead of women he's trying to impress. Eventually, Stewie cannot take it anymore. He yells, "Either take the tumour out of him or put one in me. I cannot stand this." He wants the old Brian back, pretentious and annoying as he was, because at least that version of Brian was someone Stewie could have a conversation with. At the end, Brian says something genuinely painful. "I was having fun, making new friends, getting laid all the time, sleeping like a rock, but you made the call. You unilaterally decided I was better off a bitter alcoholic failure who could only hang out with a baby. This line lands because it might be true. Brian was happier as a dumb person. His intelligence, such as it is, brings him nothing but misery. He is trapped between being too aware to be content and not talented enough to succeed. And that trap is where all of his worst behaviour comes from. So looking at all of this, here is what makes Brian's manipulation of Meg his most evil act specifically. It is not the most violent thing anyone does on this show. It is not the most destructive or the most criminal, but it might be the cruelest. Because Brian had the awareness to know exactly what he was doing and chose to do it anyway. He is not like Chris, who lacks the cognitive ability to understand consequences. Brian understands consequences perfectly. He is self-aware enough to feel shame when Quagmire calls him out. He is self-aware enough to be devastated when his book fails. He is self-aware enough to spiral when his SAT scores prove he is not a genius. Brian knows who he is, he just does not want to accept it. And in that gap between knowing and accepting, he hurts people. Specifically, he hurts Meg, the one person in the Griffin household who has even less power and fewer defences than he does. A truly crazy person would not care what Quagmire thinks. Brian is devastated by it. A truly delusional person would not recognise their own failures. Brian sees his failures clearly and falls apart. Brian is not disconnected from reality. He is dishonest about it. And that dishonesty, when applied to someone as vulnerable as Meg, becomes its own form of evil. It is the evil of someone who knows better and does it anyway. Not because they enjoy causing pain, but because their own needs, their insecurity, their loneliness, their alcoholism always come first. Other people are just collateral damage in Brian's ongoing project of pretending to be someone he is not. Brian Griffin ranks low on this list because his evil is not dramatic. It is not flashy. He does not build weapons or hide cures or commit violent crimes. His evil is the quiet, everyday cruelty of a person who is so wrapped up in their own fiction that they do not notice or do not care when they destroy someone else. He is the dog who thinks he is human, the failure who thinks he is a success, the fraud who thinks he is authentic. And the worst part is that Brian has moments, real moments, where he sees the truth about himself. After Quagmire's rant, after his book fails, after his SAT score comes back, he knows. But instead of changing, he just goes back to pretending. Every single time. That is not crazy. That is just being a coward. And in a show full of genuinely insane characters doing genuinely insane things, Brian stands out as the most painfully normal. His problems are the problems real people have. Fear of failure, need for approval, inability to change. The difference is that real people do not have a baby genius and a stupid but loving family to call them on it. Brian Griffin. Too self-aware to be crazy, too stubborn to change, too insecure to be honest, and too careless to realise that his cowardice has real victims. If you are enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, because the characters are about to get a lot worse. Moving on, we have Meg Griffin. Meg Griffin sits in a strange position on this list. She is not stupid like Chris. She is not a fraud like Brian. Meg's problem is fundamentally different from everyone who came before her and everyone who comes after. She is the product of abuse. Prolonged, relentless, deeply personal abuse that has been inflicted on her by every member of her family, every student at her school, and practically every resident of Quahog since the day she was born. Meg is the oldest Griffin child. She was originally voiced by Lacey Chabert for the first handful of episodes in Season 1, but Chabert left the show due to scheduling conflicts with her schoolwork and her role on Party of Five. Mila Kunis took over the role and has voiced Meg ever since. And throughout all those years, across hundreds of episodes, Meg's defining experience has been rejection. Her father Peter constantly tells her to shut up. Her mother Lois ignores her or dismisses her. Her brother Chris mocks her. Her baby brother Stewie treats her with open contempt. Even Brian, the family dog, looks down on her. At school, the popular kids bully her. In town, strangers treat her like she's invisible. Meg has spent her entire existence being told, in 1,000 different ways, that she does not matter, and for the vast majority of the show, Meg accepts it. She absorbs the abuse quietly, desperately trying to fit in, desperately hoping that anyone, will treat her with basic human decency. But there is a limit to what any person can take, and when Meg hits that limit, she does not just snap. She becomes genuinely, terrifyingly dangerous. Her most evil act plays out in Season 8, Episode 11. The episode is called Dial Meg for Murder, and it is the most important episode for understanding what Meg is truly capable of when the dam finally breaks. The setup is this. Meg has been dating a convict named Luke through a school pen pal program. She visits him in prison. She sends him letters. She sends him her hair, which is apparently becoming Meg's signature disturbing behaviour. When Luke escapes during a prison riot, he shows up at Meg's window and she lets him hide in her room. Brian discovers this and tells the family. Peter finds out through a TV guide of all things that Meg is harbouring a prison escapee, and he calls Joe Swanson, who arrests both Luke and Meg. Meg goes to jail for 3 months for harbouring a fugitive, and when she comes home, she is a completely different person. Meg bursts through the front door wearing a tank top, jeans, a bandana, and a new tattoo. She announces to her family, "I am home. You are all mine now." And then she immediately attacks Peter. She knocks him off the couch and stomps on his face until his teeth break. She declares, "My house now." When Peter tries to claim he is funny, Meg kicks and stomps his face again. Chris, watching this happen, warns his father, "For God's sake, Dad, have some humility. It will save your life." But the violence is just beginning. Peter is taking a shower when Meg, completely naked, steps into the shower with him holding a loofah. Peter screams, "What are you doing with that loofah?" Meg tells him not to worry about it. And then she assaults her own father with the loofah. Peter screams, "You told me not to worry about it. I should have been worried the whole time." Read that again. Meg assaults Peter. This is not an ambiguous scene. It is not subtle. The show plays it for shock comedy, and it does not stop there. At school, the popular kids mock Meg, as they always do. Connie asks what they put her in jail for, and someone says, "Being ugly." Everyone laughs. Meg does not react the way she used to. She calmly walks to a vending machine, buys multiple soda cans, puts them in a sock, walks up to Connie's table, and brutally beats her and 3 other students with the makeshift weapon. According to Lois, Meg cracked 3 kids' skulls open. Then Meg forces Stewie to punch himself in the face. When baby Stewie does not hit himself hard enough, Meg orders Peter to punch his own baby son. Peter, terrified of Meg and desperate to avoid another beating, immediately punches Stewie out of his high chair. Think about that for a moment. Meg did not just attack her family. She made her family attack each other. She forced a father to hit his infant son. That is not reactive violence. That is psychological domination. That is someone exerting total control over other people through fear. And then the episode reaches its peak. Meg kidnaps Brian. Again. This time at gunpoint. She forces him to drive to Goldman's pharmacy, where she attempts armed robbery. She points a gun at Mort Goldman and demands his money. Brian stops her by showing her an article he wrote about her for Teen People magazine. The article says nice things about Meg. It calls her sweet, kind, and resilient. It reminds Meg of who she actually is underneath the prison-hardened exterior. And Meg breaks down. She gives up the gun. She says, "Oh my God, I cannot believe I did this. I was just so tired of being everyone's whipping girl that it felt kind of good to do some of the whipping." The episode ends with Meg returning to normal. She goes back to being the family punching bag, and in a genuinely heartbreaking moment, she realises that her abuse actually serves a purpose. It keeps the family together. If they did not have Meg to pick on, they would turn on each other and destroy themselves. Meg consciously, voluntarily decides to go back to being abused because she believes it is the only way she can contribute to her family. That is not crazy. That is one of the saddest things the show has ever written. But the acts she committed before that realization are what land her on this list, and they are serious. Let us actually count them. Assault and battery against her father. Sexual assault against her father. Aggravated assault against multiple students, putting 3 of them in the hospital. Coercing her father to commit violence against an infant. Kidnapping at gunpoint. Armed robbery. In any real court, that is a list that would put someone away for decades. Now here is why Meg ranks in the middle of this list, rather than closer to the top. Her evil is reactive. Every single thing she does in this episode is a direct response to years and years and years of abuse. Meg did not wake up one day and decide to become violent. She was broken by her environment, and prison gave her the tools and the mindset to finally fight back. As Brian points out, the penal system is designed to turn small-time offenders into hardened criminals. Meg went in as a scared teenager who hid her boyfriend in her room. She came out as someone who had learned to survive through violence and intimidation, and her evil is temporary. Unlike Stewie, who is consistently plotting and scheming across every episode, or Peter, who causes new disasters every week, Meg's violent episode is brief. She snaps, she causes chaos, and then she comes back to herself. She does not stay in that mode. She recognizes what she has become, feels genuine remorse, and voluntarily chooses to return to who she was before. She also feels guilty. When Brian shows her the article, Meg does not dismiss it or double down on the violence. She immediately breaks. She cries. She cannot believe what she has done. This is self-awareness that truly dangerous people do not have. Truly evil characters do not feel remorse. Meg does, but the nature of the acts themselves is what keeps her at this position. The sexual assault of her father crosses a line that even trauma does not fully explain. Forcing Peter to punch his own infant son is an act of psychological cruelty that goes beyond hitting back at your abusers. Those are not just the actions of a victim fighting back. Those are the actions of someone who, for a brief window of time, became the kind of predator she always feared. This episode is not the only evidence of Meg's capacity for darkness. In Season 5, Episode 8, Barely Legal, the episode we talked about in Brian's section, Meg responds to Brian's rejection by kidnapping him and holding him hostage in a hotel room. She bakes that disturbing hair pie and forces Brian to eat it. She becomes obsessive and dangerous, all because one person showed her the tiniest bit of affection and then took it away. And in A Fistful of Meg from Season 12, Meg learns to fight back against a bully with Quagmire's help. She gets beaten badly at first, but she finds an unusual and disturbing way to win. She kisses the bully, pops a pimple on him, and then lifts up her shirt. The bully, seeing whatever horror is underneath, literally melts. The show does not explain what he saw. The audience is left to imagine. But the episode ends with Meg narrating that she eventually died a year later from septic shock due to a reaction to a frozen hot dog. Looking across these episodes, a clear pattern emerges. Meg is abused and rejected. She desperately seeks acceptance. She is rejected again or traumatized further. She snaps and becomes violent. She feels guilty and returns to normal. And then the cycle starts all over again. This is not insanity. This is the predictable result of prolonged abuse. Real abuse victims sometimes do become violent. Real people who are constantly rejected sometimes become obsessive. Real prisoners sometimes come out worse than they went in. Everything Meg does is grounded in a psychological reality that the show rarely acknowledges directly. And what makes Meg's situation even more tragic is how the show itself participates in her abuse. The writers use Meg as a punching bag at the meta level, not just within the story. The jokes are at her expense. Her suffering is the punchline. When Peter tells her to shut up, the audience is supposed to laugh. When the family ignores her, we are supposed to find it funny. When she is humiliated at school, the humour comes from how badly things go for her, not from any empathy for her position. This means that Meg's eventual violent breakdowns exist in a weird space. The show spends dozens of episodes training the audience to view Meg's pain as comedy, and then in one episode, it asks us to take that pain seriously. It asks us to understand that years of being treated as nothing have consequences. That the girl everyone laughed at is capable of cracking skulls and holding people at gunpoint. It is a tonal whiplash that works because the build-up has been happening across the entire series. The hair is a perfect symbol of this. In both Barely Legal and Dial Meg for Murder, Meg puts her own hair into things she gives to other people. She bakes it into a pie for Brian. She sends it in letters to Luke. This is Meg trying to insert herself into other people's lives in the most literal way possible. She cannot get people to accept her presence voluntarily, so she forces a piece of herself into them without their knowledge or consent. It is simultaneously pathetic and terrifying, which is Meg's character in a nutshell. When you compare Meg to the characters higher on this list, the distinction becomes clear. Stewie is born with evil instincts and genius-level intelligence. He plots murder for entertainment. Meg becomes violent only after extreme provocation and trauma. Peter causes chaos constantly without learning or caring about the consequences. Meg feels remorse and tries to change. Lois has psychotic breaks triggered by internal pressure. Meg's breaks are triggered by specific, identifiable traumatic events. Meg knows exactly who she is. She is a victim who briefly, terrifyingly, fought back, and then chose to stop fighting because the cost was too high, and the alternative was even worse. What makes Meg's story so dark is that she's not really evil at all. She's a normal teenager who's been psychologically destroyed by her environment. When she finally snaps and becomes dangerous, the problem is not inside her brain. The problem is everything and everyone around her. She was broken by people who were supposed to love her, and when she broke, she became something none of them could handle. Meg Griffin is what happens when you push someone too far for too long. She is capable of kidnapping, assault, armed robbery, and sexual violence, but only after being driven to it by years of mistreatment. Her evil is situational and temporary, not permanent and pathological. In a family full of genuinely unhinged people, Meg stands out as someone who could be completely normal if only someone treated her with basic human decency. Instead, she is trapped in a cycle of abuse that occasionally transforms her into someone terrifying. And then she goes back to being the punching bag because she has decided that is the only role she's allowed to play. That is not crazy. That is just tragedy wearing a pink beanie. If you are enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, because the next character on this list turns a grudge into a lifestyle. Moving on. We have Ernie the Giant Chicken. Ernie the Giant Chicken is one of the most recognizable, recurring characters in the history of Family Guy, despite having almost no dialogue and appearing in only a handful of episodes compared to the main cast. He is exactly what his name suggests, a giant chicken who wears human clothes and lives in Quahog. He is voiced by writer Danny Smith, and he represents a form of evil that is completely unique on this list. Every other character we have talked about so far has a reason for what they do. Chris is too stupid to know better. Brian is too insecure to stop himself. Meg was broken by years of abuse. Ernie's evil has no such explanation. His evil is pure, focused, and completely disproportionate to the event that started it. The entire feud between Peter Griffin and Ernie the Giant Chicken started because Ernie gave Peter an expired coupon. That is it. That is the whole inciting incident. An expired coupon, probably worth $1 or $2 at most. Peter complained about it. Ernie took offense, and from that moment forward, the two of them have been locked in a violent rivalry that has destroyed city blocks, leveled buildings, derailed subway trains, demolished the International Space Station, and caused millions of dollars in property damage across dozens of fights spanning over 2 decades of the show. The fights themselves have become legendary. They are animated like Hollywood action sequences, often lasting several uninterrupted minutes of screen time. Peter and Ernie punch, kick, throw, and slam each other through windows, vehicles, construction sites, and anything else that gets in their way. These are not slap fights or comedic scuffles. These are full-scale combat sequences that parody films like They Live and Jackie Chan movies. People get hurt, structures collapse, the destruction is catastrophic. And every single time, after what appears to be a fatal conclusion, both of them survive. One of them limps away, the other's hand or foot twitches, and the audience knows that the next time they cross paths, it will happen all over again. Their very first fight establishes the template. In Darboom, the 3rd episode of Season 2 that aired in 1999, Peter encounters Ernie for the first time, and the brawl erupts without warning, and it escalates from there. In Blind Ambition from Season 4, the fight takes them through a building, crashing through a glass ceiling, and ending near a propeller that strikes Ernie. Peter walks away battered. Ernie's talon twitches. In Internal Affairs from Season 10, their fight takes them across time itself when they land on Stewie's time pad. They literally fight their way through history, end up in a genetic research lab, then in space, and finally crash land on an oil rig, which they proceed to destroy, for an expired coupon. The disproportionate nature of this feud is what makes it so darkly fascinating and so genuinely evil when you think about it seriously. Every person alive has experienced a minor slight at some point. Bad service at a restaurant, a rude comment from a stranger, a coupon that did not work. Normal people are annoyed for a few hours, maybe a day, and then they move on. They complain to a friend over drinks and forget about it by the weekend. Ernie cannot move on. The expired coupon was not just a bad day for him. It became the defining event of his entire existence. He has organised his life around violence against Peter Griffin. Every time he sees Peter, regardless of the context, regardless of what else is happening in either of their lives, Ernie attacks. There is no negotiation. There is no pause. There is only the fight. And the most revealing episode in Ernie's arc shows that this obsession has cost him everything. The episode is called Foul Matters, and it is the only time we really get to see Ernie as a person, rather than just a violent antagonist. When Peter encounters Ernie in the hospital, Ernie is in bad shape, not from a fight, from life. He has bird flu, a serious illness, but more than that, his entire world has collapsed. Ernie tells Peter that there is nothing left for him. He lost his job, he lost his house, his wife left him for what the show describes as a bigger rooster. Ernie is not just sick, he's genuinely depressed and suicidal. He tells Peter, "I am better off dead." And Peter's response reveals that this obsession is not one-sided. When his lifelong enemy tells him he wants to die, Peter does not show sympathy. He says, "Oh, that is sad, I agree, I guess that means I win, huh?" Even at Ernie's lowest point, all Peter cares about is the rivalry. He cannot see past the feud to the person in front of him, but it gets darker. When Peter suggests there is a vaccine for bird flu, Ernie refuses. He says the vaccines are loaded with mercury and antifreeze. Ernie is an anti-vaxxer. He is so invested in conspiracy thinking that he would rather die of a preventable disease than accept treatment. Peter's reaction is telling. "I knew I hated you for a good reason." As Ernie lies dying in the hospital, Peter stays with him. There's a moment where Peter mentions he had a great line prepared for when he finally beat Ernie. Ernie asks to hear it. Peter pauses for a long time, then says, "I got to go." This awkward, almost tender moment reveals something strange about their relationship. For all the violence, for all the destruction, there is something between them that neither can fully explain. Peter does not actually want Ernie to die. Not like this, not from illness. The rivalry is only meaningful if they are both fighting. And then Peter saves Ernie's life. He performs some kind of medical intervention and brings Ernie back from the brink of death. Ernie is stunned. "You saved me. Why?" Peter's answer is one of the most important speeches in the entire show. He says, "Because I hate you. Every day I wake up not knowing if you're going to come out of nowhere and punch me in the face. I flinch every time a door opens. I look over my shoulder every time I bend down to tie my shoes. And I flip my porch light on every night before I go to bed, just to see if you're standing there. Do you have any idea how exciting that is? I did not save your life because I like you. I saved it because I hate you." And then Peter adds a practical reason. "Also, if you die, I will be solely responsible for all the destruction we have caused over the years." Ernie smiles. "I hate you too, Peter Griffin." The episode ends with Peter flipping on his porch light that night to check if Ernie is outside. And he is, standing there in the darkness, waiting. Peter's reaction is a single word: good. This ending is perfect because it shows that the cycle will continue. Both of them are satisfied with this arrangement. The hatred is not a burden. It is the foundation of their relationship. They need each other, not despite the hatred, but because of it. So what makes Ernie's evil distinct from the other characters on this list? First, it is completely self-chosen. Nobody forced Ernie into this feud. He was not abused or traumatized or broken by his environment. A coupon expired. He could have shrugged it off and gone home. Instead, he chose to dedicate his life to violence against one specific person. Every fight, every ambush, every destroyed building is a choice Ernie makes voluntarily. Second, the scale of destruction is staggering. Together, Peter and Ernie have derailed subway trains, crashed through the International Space Station, driven a cruise ship through half a city, leveled countless buildings, and destroyed an oil rig. The collateral damage of their fights would easily total in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Innocent bystanders have been put in danger dozens of times, all over a coupon. Third, Ernie cannot stop. This is not someone who had a bad week and made a regrettable decision. This is someone whose entire identity is organized around hatred and violence directed at a single target. His job is gone. His house is gone. His wife is gone. His health is gone. And through all of it, the one constant in Ernie's life is his need to fight Peter Griffin. Fourth, his refusal to get vaccinated, even while dying of bird flu, reveals a paranoia that extends beyond the feud. Ernie is not just obsessed with Peter. He is someone who distrusts institutions, rejects help, and would rather die than admit he is wrong about something. That stubbornness is not just annoying, it is pathological. And fifth, the mutual nature of this insanity. Peter saves Ernie's life, not out of compassion, but out of addiction. He is addicted to the fear, the anticipation, the adrenaline of never knowing when Ernie will attack. Both men have built their lives around hating each other, and neither one wants to escape. When you compare Ernie to the characters who rank higher, his evil has a certain purity to it. He does not pretend to be something he is not. Like Brian. He was not broken by someone else, like Meg. He does not cause chaos accidentally, like Peter. Ernie chose this. He chose to turn a coupon into a war. He chose to fight instead of forgive. He chose destruction over peace, every single time, for over 2 decades. What makes this even more unsettling is the collateral damage. When Peter and Ernie fight, they do not care who else gets caught in the crossfire. In their various battles across the series, they have crashed through populated buildings, sent vehicles careening into traffic, and destroyed infrastructure that real people depend on. The International Space Station fight alone represents billions of dollars in taxpayer-funded equipment and potentially endangered the lives of any astronauts on board. The oil rig destruction could have caused an environmental catastrophe. The subway train derailment could have killed dozens of passengers, and neither Peter nor Ernie has ever once acknowledged the bystanders. They do not stop to check if anyone was hurt when a wall collapses. They do not pause when their fighting sends a car flying into a crowd. The people of Quahog are invisible to them during these fights. The only reality that exists is the two of them, swinging at each other, while the world burns around them. This is what elevates Ernie from guy with anger issues to genuinely evil. A bar fight is one thing. A sustained, decades-long campaign of violence that endangers entire communities is something else entirely. The fact that Ernie initiates these fights, that he ambushes Peter without provocation, that he could stop at any time and simply chooses not to, means that every piece of collateral damage is on him. Every bystander who dives out of the way of a thrown dumpster, every driver who swerves to avoid two men rolling across the highway, every building owner who has to file an insurance claim because a chicken and a fat man crashed through their storefront. All of it traces back to a coupon that expired sometime in the late 1990s. Ernie the Giant Chicken is crazy in the most focused, purposeful way imaginable. He is not disconnected from reality. He is not hearing voices or having hallucinations. He simply cannot forgive a minor slight and has built his entire existence around violent revenge. And the fact that he stands on Peter's porch at night, waiting to be seen, tells you everything you need to know about who Ernie really is. He could ambush Peter anywhere, at any time. He does not need to announce himself, but he makes himself visible because he wants Peter to know he is there. He wants the fear and the anticipation to continue. The standing on the porch is not strategy. It is performance. It is Ernie saying, I am still here, I am still angry, and tomorrow, or next week, or next month, we will do this again. That is not just a grudge. That is an addiction to conflict so deep that it has replaced every other relationship, every other goal, and every other purpose in Ernie's life. And in a show full of characters who cause harm for complicated reasons, Ernie stands out because his reason is the simplest one of all. He was mildly inconvenienced once, 25 years ago, and he chose to let it consume him entirely. If you are enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, because the next character's evil is not just criminal, it is a way of life. Moving on. We have Glenn Quagmire. Glenn Quagmire is Peter Griffin's neighbour and one of his closest friends. He is a commercial airline pilot. He lives alone on Spooner Street. He spends most of his free time at the Drunken Clam Bar with Peter, Joe Swanson and Cleveland Brown. And he is voiced, like Peter and Stewie and Brian and Carter, by Seth MacFarlane. Quagmire is known for one thing. His catchphrase giggity has been part of pop culture for over 2 decades. People who have never watched a single episode of Family Guy know who Quagmire is and what he represents. He is the sex guy, the horny neighbour, the friend who makes everything inappropriate. But here is what people do not talk about enough. Quagmire's sexual compulsion is not a personality quirk. It is a clinical addiction so severe that it dominates every aspect of his existence. And when you actually look at what Quagmire does across the run of the show, you stop laughing pretty quickly. Because what starts as comedy about a guy who cannot keep it in his pants turns into a catalogue of actual crimes. His most evil act comes in Season 13, Episode 10. The episode is called Quagmire's Mum, and it deals with the darkest possible version of Quagmire's sexual compulsion. He commits statutory rape. The episode sets it up like this. After having sex with a woman named Kira, she reveals that she is not as old as Quagmire assumed. She says, "You said you were 23. Quagmire protests. "You said you were 23, Kira responds. "Yeah, and you said you love me." And Quagmire, with absolutely no defense left, admits, "Well, I guess you got me there." Quagmire is arrested and charged with statutory rape. He goes to court. The judge sentences him to 20 years in prison. 20 years. That is how seriously the legal system within the show treats what Quagmire did. And then everything changes. An elderly woman's voice calls out, "Oh no you don't," from the back of the courtroom. Quagmire says, "Mom," and every single man in the courtroom responds in unison with her name, Crystal. The joke here is that Quagmire's mother has had sex with every man in the courtroom. The judge, the jury, the lawyers, the spectators, all of them. Crystal uses her influence, her connections, her sexual history with the entire legal apparatus to get her son's sentence commuted. Peter celebrates, and the line he delivers is one of the most telling in the entire series. Quagmire got away with it and learned nothing. That is great, read that again. Got away with it and learned nothing. The show itself, through Peter's dialogue, explicitly acknowledges that Quagmire faced zero consequences for having sex and will continue doing exactly what he has always done. There is no redemption arc. There is no lesson learned. There is no punishment that sticks. During the hearing, Peter attempts to defend Quagmire using what might be the most insane legal argument in television history. He cites Game of Thrones. According to Game of Thrones, if the girl has had her blood, she is good to go. Has the girl had her blood? Answer the question. When the judge reminds him that the girl not over 18, Peter pivots to an even more absurd defence. Yes, however, Mr. Quagmire was born on February 29th. Ergo, he is only 12. Ergo, the girl attacked him. This is played entirely for laughs. The audience is supposed to find Peter's logic funny because of how nonsensical it is. But underneath the comedy, the actual event being joked about is a grown man having sex with a minor, and his entire community mobilising to protect him from consequences. And this is not the only time Quagmire's behaviour crosses into criminal territory. In Season 5, Episode 12, Airport 07, we see Quagmire in his professional environment. He is a pilot. He is responsible for the lives of hundreds of passengers every time he flies a plane, and his pre-flight and post-flight announcements are laced with sexual references. After landing, he makes an announcement that reveals he had sex with a passenger during the flight. We know your choice in airport sex, and we thank you for choosing Quagmire. Please exercise caution when standing up, as the contents in your vagina may have shifted during coitus. He abandoned the cockpit of a commercial airplane to have sex. He left the controls of an aircraft carrying hundreds of people because his addiction demanded immediate satisfaction. The fact that the plane apparently landed safely does not change what he did. A pilot leaving the cockpit during flight is a federal crime. It endangered every person on board. And Quagmire did not just do it, he bragged about it over the intercom. In Season 12, Episode 3, Quagmire's Quagmire, we see what happens when Quagmire meets someone whose addiction matches his own. He meets a woman named Sonia at a computer repair shop. They bond over his massive pornography collection. They start dating, and then Quagmire wakes up handcuffed to a bed, having been drugged. A normal person would be terrified. A normal person would call the police. Quagmire decides he has found his soulmate. They engage in increasingly extreme sexual acts. Quagmire starts showing up at the Drunken Clam with black eyes, but he refuses help because the sex is too good. He is being physically abused, but his addiction overrides his survival instinct. Eventually, Sonia kidnaps Quagmire. She beats him. She locks him in the trunk of his car. She drives away with him while he protests, not because he's being kidnapped, but because she says giggity, and he yells, "That is my word. That is my word." Even while being abducted and assaulted, Quagmire's primary concern is that someone is appropriating his catchphrase. Peter, Joe, and Quagmire's father, Ida, eventually find him locked in a storage unit. When they pound on the door, muffled sounds come from inside. Peter, being Peter, interprets this as, "Oh, he is eating. We will come back when you're done eating." He completely misreads that Quagmire is bound and gagged. They rescue him. Sonia is arrested, and Quagmire's takeaway from the entire experience, he says he will need to be the really kinky one in future relationships. He was drugged, beaten, kidnapped, and held prisoner, and his response is that he wants the next relationship to be even more extreme. His addiction is so severe that criminal abuse registers as an exciting baseline that needs to be exceeded. Now, here is what makes Quagmire's spot on this list particularly disturbing. It is not just that he committed statutory rape, it is the complete absence of a system that stops him. Every other character on this list who commits evil acts faces at least some consequences, even if those consequences are temporary. Peter goes to court, Meg goes to prison, Lois gets sentenced. Even Ernie suffers the loss of his job, his home, and his wife because of his violent obsession. Quagmire faces nothing. His mother literally sleeps her way through the justice system to free him. The show has him back at the Drunken Clam the very next episode as if nothing happened. No probation, no treatment, no registration, nothing. And his friends enable it. Peter does not confront Quagmire about his behaviour. Joe, who is a police officer, does not arrest him for anything beyond the statutory rape charge that gets thrown out anyway. Cleveland, before he left for his own show, never seriously challenged Quagmire's lifestyle. The entire social structure around Quagmire is designed to look the other way, and the show itself has acknowledged the tension between Quagmire the comedy character and Quagmire the actual criminal. In the episode Quagmire's Dad from Season 8, we see a rare moment of genuine emotional depth from Quagmire when his father Dan, a decorated war veteran, comes out as transgender and transitions to become Ida. The episode deals with Quagmire's confusion, his prejudices, and ultimately his reconciliation with his father. It is one of the few times Quagmire is treated as a three-dimensional person. But even in that emotional moment, Quagmire's addiction betrays him. When he hugs Ida, who now has a woman's body, Quagmire gets an erection. He apologises. Sorry, damn thing cannot tell the difference. His body automatically responds to physical contact with any woman's body, even his own father's. His sex drive is so uncontrollable that it activates during what is supposed to be a heartfelt family reconciliation. This is not a choice. This is a malfunction so deep that it overrides the most basic emotional boundaries a person has. The Quagmire's Dad episode also leads to one of the show's most violent sequences. When Brian unknowingly sleeps with Ida at a hotel and the truth comes out, Quagmire storms into the Griffin house, drags Brian from under a bed, and beats him savagely while threatening to blow his head off. The violence is sustained and genuine. This is not a cartoon punch that leaves a bump. This is an extended assault that leaves Brian broken on the floor. As Quagmire leaves, Brian delivers the final line. "I slept with your dad." This moment shows that Quagmire, despite everything else about him, does have a protective instinct when it comes to his family. But that instinct manifests as attempted murder. His emotional range runs from sexual compulsion to extreme violence, with almost nothing in between. This creates a character who is, in practical terms, untouchable. He can commit sex crimes, abandon his professional responsibilities, endanger hundreds of passengers, and get kidnapped by a predator. And at the end of every episode, he is right back where he started. Unchanged, unrepentant, unpunished. And the show frames all of this as comedy. The giggity catchphrase turns sexual obsession into a cute personality trait. The escalating sexual scenarios are played for shock laughs. Even the statutory rape episode wraps up with Peter celebrating that his friend got away with it. Family Guy asks its audience to laugh at a man whose behaviour, in reality, would result in prison time and sex offender registration. When you compare Quagmire to the characters who rank higher on this list, his evil is distinctive because it is criminal, compulsive, and totally unchecked. Ernie's violence is targeted at one person. Quagmire's behaviour affects everyone he encounters. Meg's violence is reactive and temporary. Quagmire's predatory behaviour is constant and permanent. Brian manipulates people emotionally. Quagmire's manipulation has physical and legal consequences. He is one of the few characters on this show whose most evil act would, without question, result in serious prison time in the real world. Statutory rape is not a cartoon gag. It is a felony that carries decades of incarceration. The fact that Quagmire avoids this consequence through his mother's sexual influence does not make the act less evil. It makes the situation more disturbing. Glenn Quagmire is a sex addict nobody stops. He is a predator nobody confronts. He is a criminal nobody punishes. And the most frightening thing about him is not what he does. It is that the world he lives in has decided his behaviour is acceptable. His friends laugh it off. His employer keeps him flying. His community keeps tolerating him. And the justice system, when it finally does catch up with him, is immediately compromised by someone willing to trade sex for freedom. Quagmire is not the craziest character on this list. He is not the most intelligent or the most strategic, but he might be the one whose real-world equivalent would do the most damage. Because in reality, there are no catchphrases to make predatory behaviour cute. There are no moms who can sleep through a courtroom to make charges disappear. There are only victims and consequences, and Quagmire has never had to deal with either. If you are enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe. Because the next character is someone you probably think is the normal one. You would be wrong. Moving on, we have Lois Griffin. For most of Family Guy's run, Lois Griffin has been the voice of reason. She is the one who tries to stop Peter from doing something catastrophically stupid. She is the one who attempts to hold the family together when everyone else is falling apart. She is the responsible parent, the functional adult, the stable centre of a household that would collapse without her. And that is exactly what makes her so dangerous. Because Lois is not actually stable. She is a pressure cooker. She absorbs the chaos of her family, the stupidity of her husband, the cruelty of her father, and the dysfunction of her children. Day after day, year after year, and she pushes it all down. She smiles, she manages, she copes, until she does not. And when Lois Griffin finally stops coping, she does not just lose control, she transforms into someone her family cannot recognise. Lois is the matriarch of the Griffin family. She has been voiced by Alex Borstein since the pilot episode in 1999. She comes from extreme wealth. Her father, Carter Pewterschmidt, is a billionaire. Lois gave up a privileged life to marry Peter, a decision her father has never forgiven and never lets her forget. On paper, Lois had every opportunity and chose love over money. In practice, that choice trapped her in a life of managing an incompetent husband, raising 3 children who range from genius to profoundly challenged, and dealing with a father who views her marriage as a personal insult. Her most evil act plays out across Season 4, Episode 9. The episode is called Breaking Out is Hard to Do, and it starts with something almost comically small. A ham. Lois is at the supermarket with her family. She sees a ham she cannot afford, and in a moment of weakness, an impulse she probably does not even fully understand, in the moment, she steals it. She puts it in her bag and walks out without paying. This one act opens a door inside Lois that she did not know existed. She discovers something about herself that changes everything. She enjoys stealing, not just the ham, the act itself. The thrill of taking something that is not hers, of getting away with it, of breaking a rule after years of being the one who enforces them. It fills something inside her that being a good wife and mother never could. And from that single ham, Lois escalates rapidly. She starts stealing everything. Clothes, expensive objects, art, car parts. The show mentions her stealing mufflers at one point. Lois has gone from a grocery store shoplifter to a full-blown kleptomaniac, and she is loving every second of it. When Lois tries to explain her behaviour to Quagmire, her explanation takes an unintentionally sexual direction that the show plays for comedy. She says she felt like there was a void in her life, a secret hole in her that she was trying to fill with expensive objects and things. Quagmire reacts predictably, but underneath the innuendo, Lois is saying something real. She had a void. Being Peter's wife and the family caretaker was not enough. It left her empty, and crime filled the emptiness in a way that domesticity never could. Eventually, Lois gets caught. She goes to court. The judge is about to give her a warning, which would have ended this story before it really began. But Peter, being Peter, makes everything worse. He sneezes and the judge adds a year to her sentence. Peter says that was a sneeze and the judge adds another year. By the time Peter calls him a douchebag, Lois is sentenced to 3 years in prison. The family falls apart without her. This is not an exaggeration. The house becomes chaos. Peter cannot function. The kids struggle. They are completely dependent on Lois in ways none of them ever acknowledged or appreciated, so they break her out of prison. Now the family is on the run. They flee to Quahog's Asian town and try to start new lives. Chris becomes a rickshaw driver. Stewie ends up working in a sweatshop sewing shoes until he accidentally sews one to his own hand. Peter becomes a sumo wrestler. But when Peter appears on television during a sumo match, Joe tracks them down. The family runs through Asian town, ends up in the sewers, and the whole thing spirals further into absurdity. Eventually, they are caught. Lois faces consequences, and the episode ends. But what this episode established is something the show would return to again and again. Underneath the responsible wife and mother lies a woman who enjoys breaking the law. The stable centre of the Griffin family is one bad day away from becoming a criminal. And not a reluctant criminal who steals out of necessity. A joyful criminal who steals because it makes her feel alive. And this is not the only time Lois reveals her darker side. In Season 6, Episode 10, Play It Again, Brian, the show explores the cracks in Lois's marriage. Peter repeatedly ditches Lois for activities with his friends. Fishing, beekeeping, diving. Every time Lois expects him to join her for something important, she turns around to find him in some kind of gear, heading out the door. He misses putting flowers on her grandmother's grave. He cancels their scheduled intimacy night because he and the guys are going beekeeping. Peter's constant neglect leaves Lois vulnerable. And Brian, who has always had feelings for Lois, sees an opportunity. He writes her a romantic essay about his feelings. He plans an evening with candles and wine, and he makes a move. Lois almost goes through with it. The family dog, her husband's best friend. She came that close to cheating on Peter with Brian. She ultimately does not. But the episode makes clear that Lois's faithfulness to Peter is not absolute. It is conditional. It is based on Peter meeting a minimum standard of attention and affection, and he came dangerously close to falling below that line. In Model Misbehavior, Lois becomes a model, and her personality changes completely. She becomes self-absorbed, vain, and focused entirely on her appearance and career. The selfless mother vanishes and is replaced by someone who cares more about magazine covers than her children. When she gets external validation, the attention and success she never receives at home, the responsible Lois disappears entirely. And in partial terms of endearment, one of the most controversial episodes in the show's history, Lois makes a decision about surrogacy and abortion that was so divisive, Fox refused to air the episode in the United States. The episode was banned from initial broadcast. Whatever your personal feelings about the subject matter, the episode demonstrates that Lois is capable of making decisions that shock even her own family. She is not bound by conventional morality when it comes to her own body and her own life choices. There is also a broader pattern that the show hints at but never fully explores. Lois grew up wealthy. She had access to everything. She chose to give that up for Peter, which her father has never stopped punishing her for. But giving up wealth for love only works if the love sustains you. And Peter's love, such as it is, comes packaged with constant neglect, endless stupidity, financial irresponsibility, and a level of emotional immaturity that would test anyone's patience. Lois did not just marry Peter, she married a lifestyle of perpetual crisis management. Every day she wakes up knowing that her husband might start an international incident, crash a car into a building, or get the family into legal trouble. Every day she has to be the one who cleans up the mess, calms down the authorities, and explains to her children why their father is the way he is. And she does this without any help, without any recognition, and without any break. The crime spree was not random, it was inevitable. When you take a competent, intelligent woman and trap her in a life of cleaning up after a man who cannot be helped, something is going to give eventually. The only question is when and how badly. For Lois, the answer was at the supermarket, and very badly. So what makes the crime spree and breaking out is hard to do. Lois's most evil act specifically, it is the joy. When Meg snaps and becomes violent, it is reactive. It is temporary. It is born from pain. When Peter causes destruction, it is usually born from stupidity. He does not know what he is doing. When Chris says something disturbing, he does not understand the implications. Lois understands perfectly. She knows that stealing is wrong. She knows that becoming a fugitive puts her family at risk. She knows that the responsible thing to do would be to face the consequences of her actions. And she does not care. She enjoys the crime more than she enjoys being a good person. This is what makes Lois's evil so unsettling. It is hidden. For 90% of the show, Lois appears completely normal and rational. She is the one the audience trusts. She is the one who seems like she has it together. And then, without warning, the dam bursts and she becomes someone unrecognizable, a criminal, a potential cheater, a narcissist, a fugitive. Her breakdowns are not small, targeted episodes of bad behavior. They are total personality transformations. When Lois goes bad, everything changes. She does not just steal one thing and feel guilty. She becomes a kleptomaniac who steals everything she can get her hands on. She does not just have a moment of temptation with Brian. She plans an entire evening around it. She does not just model casually. She abandons her family's needs entirely. And every time, after the episode ends and the crisis resolves, Lois goes back to being the responsible one. She returns to managing Peter's stupidity and raising her children and holding the household together, which means the pressure starts building again, which means another breakdown is inevitable. Lois Griffin is a ticking time bomb living in plain sight. The most frightening thing about her is not what she does when she breaks. It is that she always goes back to normal afterward. She always returns to being the responsible wife and mother. And that return is not a sign of healing. It is the timer resetting. The pressure begins accumulating again the moment she resumes her role. The next break is always coming. And because Lois is smart, because she's aware of her own patterns in a way that Peter and Chris never could be, she probably knows this about herself. She probably lies in bed at night sometimes, after managing another one of Peter's disasters, after calming another fight, after pretending to laugh at another terrible joke, and she feels it building, the void, the restlessness, the quiet voice in the back of her mind that says, "You liked it better when you were stealing," and she pushes it down. Again, because that is what Lois does. She pushes things down, until the day she cannot anymore, and then the whole town pays for it. When you compare Lois to the characters below her on this list, the distinction is clear. Chris is too dumb to know better. Brian is too insecure to be honest. Meg was broken by her environment. Ernie chose violence but is consistent about it. Quagmire is driven by addiction. Lois is driven by suppression. She is a woman who has spent decades being the responsible one, and that responsibility has eaten away at something inside her. When it finally breaks through, it does not come out as sadness or frustration or even anger. It comes out as crime, as betrayal, as vanity, as moral boundary crossing. And the fact that nobody sees it coming, because Lois is so good at pretending she's fine, makes every breakdown hit harder. Peter is an obvious disaster. Everyone can see him coming. Lois is the earthquake that happens when the ground looked perfectly stable. She is not crazy the way Stewie is crazy. She is not dangerous the way Peter is dangerous. She is dangerous the way a person who has been pushed beyond their breaking point is dangerous. And the most terrifying thing about Lois Griffin is that she has been pushed beyond that point multiple times, and she keeps getting pushed back, which means the next time she breaks could be worse than anything we have seen before. Lois Griffin, the ticking time bomb, the responsible one who is anything but, the wife and mother who discovered she likes crime better than cooking, attention better than responsibility, and freedom better than family. If you are enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, because the next character is the King of Chaos himself. Moving on, we have Peter Griffin. Peter Griffin is the main character of Family Guy. He has been the centre of this show since it premiered on Fox on January 31st, 1999. He is a middle-aged man who works at a brewery in Quahog, Rhode Island. He is married to Lois. He has 3 children, Meg, Chris, and Stewie. He has a talking dog named Brian, and he has been voiced by Seth MacFarlane for over 400 episodes. Peter is not the smartest character on this list. He is not the most calculated or the most strategic, but he might be the most destructive because his particular combination of profound stupidity, complete lack of accountability, and full adult agency creates a person who functions as a walking disaster area with a driver's license, a bank account, and absolutely no ability to learn from anything. Peter's most evil act is actually a tie between 2 moments that are both so disturbing they deserve equal attention. And together, they paint a picture of a man who is far more dangerous than any genius villain or criminal mastermind, because Peter's damage is constant, unpredictable, and totally immune to consequences. The first act happens in Season 4, Episode 12. The episode is called The Perfect Castaway. Peter and his friends go fishing when they encounter a hurricane and are stranded at sea. They survive on a raft made of inflatable dolls. Days pass, everyone is starving and desperate, and then Peter's friends discover something. Peter has been eating this entire time. While Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland were wasting away, Peter was secretly consuming food. But when they confront him about it, the truth is worse than hoarding granola bars. The food Peter has been eating is Joe's legs. Peter ate his paraplegic friend's legs. Joe Swanson is a police officer who uses a wheelchair because he is paralysed from the waist down. He cannot feel his legs. He cannot defend his legs. And while they were all stranded together, Peter was eating parts of his disabled friend's body. This is not a metaphor. It is not an exaggeration played for comedy in the same way a cutaway gag works. Peter Griffin committed an act of cannibalism against a disabled person who could not protect himself. In any other show, in any other context, this would be the inciting incident for a horror film. The second act happens in Season 12, Episode 14. The episode is called Fresh Air, and it might be the single most disturbing episode in the history of the show. The setup starts with Carter Pewterschmidt deciding to change his will. Instead of leaving his fortune to Lois, Carter decides to leave everything to Chris, his grandson. This sets off a chain of events that reveals just how far Peter will go when money is involved. Peter becomes obsessed with Chris, not in a fatherly way, in a financial predator way. He starts trying to impress Chris, spending time with him, doing whatever Chris wants, all because Chris is now the key to Carter's billions. And when simple flattery does not work, Peter arrives at an idea so insane that it breaks the other characters' understanding of reality. Peter decides to marry his own son. He proposes to Chris. "Chris Griffin, will you marry me?" When Chris asks if it is even legal for a man to marry his son, Peter says, "It is in Vermont. As long as it is a man and a man, anything goes up there." He is using the legalization of same-sex marriage to justify incest. That is the logic Peter has constructed to get access to Carter's money. Chris, desperate for any attention from his father, is confused but does not immediately refuse. He says it seems weird and asks if men are not supposed to marry women. Peter dismisses this. No, that is just all of human history except for the last 5 months. And then the episode goes to a place that is genuinely horrifying. Peter decides to make a romantic gesture to win Chris over. He kills a child. The transcript of the episode shows Peter saying, "Hey Chris, remember that kid you said was bullying you at school? Well, here is his head." Chris screams, "That is not even him. That is the deaf kid." Peter responds, "Oh, that was sign language. I thought he was trying to defend himself with terrible karate." Peter murdered an innocent child, the wrong child, a deaf child who was using sign language, which Peter interpreted as a karate defense. And Peter's response to murdering the wrong kid is not horror or remorse. It is confusion about the mix-up. Joe Swanson, who witnesses Peter's plan to marry Chris, grabs his own son Kevin's hand and says, "I do not know what normal is anymore." This line, delivered by the show's most stable authority figure, captures how Peter's behaviour has progressed beyond anything the other characters can process. He is not just breaking laws, he is breaking other people's sense of what reality is. These two moments, the cannibalism of Joe's legs and the child murder combined with an incest proposal, represent the extreme ends of Peter's evil. One is an act of survival taken to a monstrous extreme. The other is a premeditated crime driven entirely by greed. But Peter's evil is not limited to these peak moments. His entire existence is a catalogue of destruction. In the pilot episode, Death Has a Shadow, Peter gets drunk, falls asleep at his job at the happy-go-lucky toy factory. And while he sleeps, dangerous items replace the safe toys on the assembly line. Knives, power sockets, tanks of gasoline. Children get hurt, Peter gets fired, and his response is to discover welfare fraud, collecting $150,000 a week due to a computer error. Any reasonable person would report the mistake. Peter spends it on the statue of David, whose stone penis he breaks off and throws into Quagmire's house. In Petarded from Season 4, Peter takes an IQ test and is revealed to be, in the show's terminology from that era, mentally challenged. His IQ score is around 70. He immediately begins exploiting this diagnosis for special treatment and disability money, using a condition that genuinely affects millions of people as a tool for personal gain. In PTV from Season 4, Peter creates his own television station to fight FCC censorship. During this arc, he's shown as a babysitter who leaves a child in a bathtub full of water with a blow dryer, medicine bottles as rattles, Drano in case there is a clog, and towels on the roof. He then walks out. This is played for dark comedy, but what is depicted on screen is a scenario that would kill a real child. In Lottery Fever from Season 10, Peter wins the lottery and immediately uses his wealth to torment his friends. He gives Joe and Quagmire money, then forces them to perform a vaudeville act while he shoots them with a BB gun. When asked to avoid the face, Peter intentionally shoots Joe in the eye. Joe loses the eye and has to replace it with a glass one. When Quagmire complains, Peter shoots him in the throat. He also buys a blood diamond harvested by murderous rebels and gives it to Lois so she will stop being mad at him. He knows it was produced through violence and slavery. He does not care. And in Tales of a Third Grade Nothing, Peter tries to get a promotion at work, and one of his schemes involves blowing up a billboard for a rival brewing company. The plan backfires, and he destroys a children's hospital instead. Peter is initially horrified, but calms down when the billboard also catches fire, as if the original goal being achieved offsets the fact that he just leveled a building full of sick kids. Peter has also demonstrated a pattern of cruelty toward animals that goes beyond thoughtlessness into genuine sadism. According to multiple episode catalogues, he has killed Quagmire's cat with a straight razor while trying to shave it, strangled a sea turtle with phone cords, eviscerated a whale with a forklift, and killed a family of squirrels by cutting down their tree with a chainsaw. Even Brian, his supposed best friend, has been thrown into a fire hydrant by Peter's car, losing teeth and breaking his face. This is not a man who makes occasional mistakes with animals. This is a pattern of violence against creatures that cannot defend themselves. And his treatment of Meg deserves its own category of evil. Peter consistently and deliberately abuses his oldest child in ways that go far beyond the negligent parenting he shows Chris and Stewie. He has told her to shut up hundreds of times. He has wished her out of existence. In one cutaway, he attempted to shoot her with a pistol, simply for saying, "Hi." He has farted on her, pushed her, mocked her appearance, and made it clear in every possible way that she is unwanted. When other people bully Meg, Peter sometimes objects, but his own treatment of her is worse than anything her schoolmates do. He is a massive hypocrite about it, getting angry when others hurt Meg while doing the exact same thing to her himself, but worse. The show itself has acknowledged Peter's irredeemable nature. In Fresh Air, Joe Swanson watches Peter propose to his own son and says, "I do not know what normal is anymore." When a police officer, a man who deals with criminals for a living, says that Peter's behaviour has broken his understanding of normality, that tells you something about where Peter falls on the spectrum of human dysfunction. Looking at all of this, Peter Griffin's evil is distinct from every other character on this list for one reason: he never stops. Stewie's murder plots come and go. Quagmire's criminal episodes are sporadic. Lois's breakdowns are rare. Ernie only shows up occasionally, but Peter is causing damage in every single episode. Every week without fail, Peter Griffin is endangering someone, destroying something, committing a crime, or creating a disaster that his family and community will have to clean up. And he never, ever learns. The show has given Peter hundreds of opportunities to grow, to understand the impact of his actions, to develop even a basic sense of responsibility. And every time, without exception, Peter finishes the episode exactly the same as he started. He apologizes when forced to, promises to do better, and then immediately begins planning his next catastrophe. Peter is not insane enough to be institutionalized, but he is not sane enough to function responsibly in society. He occupies a dangerous middle ground where he has just enough intelligence to operate in the world. A job, a car, a bank account, social connections, but not enough intelligence or empathy to avoid turning every situation into a disaster. His stupidity is not innocent. Chris is innocent in his stupidity because he cannot process information correctly. Peter can process information. He just does not care. He ate Joe's legs, not because he did not know what legs were. He ate them because he was hungry, and his needs came first. He proposed marriage to his son, not because he did not understand that incest is wrong. He understood. He just wanted the money more than he wanted to be moral. Peter Griffin is the most dangerous type of person. He is functional enough to move through the world without supervision, but dysfunctional enough to cause catastrophic harm wherever he goes. He has the freedom and resources to act on every impulse, but none of the judgment or empathy to filter those impulses before they become actions. And the scariest thing about Peter is that his evil is relatable. Not the cannibalism or the child murder, but the underlying pattern. A person who is selfish to their core, who prioritizes their immediate desires over everyone else's well-being, who causes harm through a combination of ignorance and indifference, and who never ever learns from the damage they create. That is not a cartoon villain. That is a personality type that exists in the real world. And unlike cartoon Peter, real-world Peters do not get reset at the end of every episode. Peter Griffin. Too stupid to know he is dangerous. Too functional to be stopped. Too selfish to change. And too oblivious to realize that the trail of destruction behind him is entirely his fault. If you are enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, because the next two characters take evil to a level that makes everything we have talked about so far look like minor inconveniences. Moving on. We have Carter Pewterschmidt. Every character we have ranked so far has been dangerous in some way. Chris through ignorance, Brian through selfishness, Meg through trauma, Ernie through obsession, Quagmire through addiction, Lois through suppression, Peter through chaos. But none of them have the power to affect millions of lives. Their evil, however disturbing, is local. It is contained to a family, a neighbourhood, a town. The worst Peter can do is destroy a building or ruin a friendship. The worst Quagmire can do is hurt the people immediately around him. The worst Meg can do is terrorise her household for a few weeks. Carter Pewterschmidt operates on an entirely different scale. He is a billionaire. He runs Pewterschmidt Industries. He controls pharmaceutical companies, has connections to the highest levels of government and business, and wields the kind of influence that bends reality around his will. When Carter makes a decision, it does not just affect his family, it affects populations. Carter is Lois's father and Peter's father-in-law. He has been voiced by Seth MacFarlane throughout the show's run. He is married to Barbara Pewterschmidt and represents old money, corporate power, and the particular kind of moral bankruptcy that comes with having so much wealth that other people stop being people and start being numbers on a spreadsheet. And his most evil act is not just the worst thing a Family Guy character has done. It might be the most consequential act of evil in the entire show's universe. It happens in Season 11, Episode 3. The episode is called The Old Man and the Big C, and the plot reveals something about Carter that changes how you look at every scene he has ever appeared in. The episode begins when Brian overhears shocking news at the hospital. Carter Pewterschmidt has terminal cancer. Brian tells Stewie, who confirms it by checking cameras in the Pewterschmidt house. Brian tells Lois and the whole family rushes to Carter's home, expecting to say goodbye to a dying man. But when they arrive, Carter is perfectly healthy. Brian looks like he made the whole thing up. He loses credibility with the family, but Brian is not wrong. He suspects Carter is hiding something, and he convinces Stewie to help him investigate. What they discover is much worse than a misdiagnosis. Carter has not just recovered from cancer, he has the cure for cancer. Not an experimental treatment, not a promising research lead, the actual complete working cure for cancer. And he has been hiding it. When Brian and Stewie confront Carter, he reveals the full truth. He has been sitting on the cure since 1999, over a decade at the time this episode aired in 2012. Carter had his scientists develop a substance the show calls specimen seed, which cures cancer completely. He used it on himself, and then he buried it. His reason? To protect his pharmaceutical company's profits from selling cancer treatments. Think about what that means within the world of the show. Since 1999, millions of people in the Family Guy universe have been diagnosed with cancer. They have gone through chemotherapy. They have lost their hair, their strength, their dignity. They have watched their families struggle. Many of them have died, slowly, painfully, surrounded by people who loved them and could do nothing to save them. And the entire time, Carter Pewterschmidt had the cure locked in a vault. He watched all of that suffering happen, and he did nothing because the suffering was more profitable than the solution. Brian is furious. On the drive home, he rages about what Carter has done, but Stewie reveals that he stole the cure during the confrontation. They bring it to Lois to expose Carter's crime. Carter shows up to take it back. Brian tells Lois what the substance is. She is horrified. Lois tries to appeal to her father's humanity. She brings up people close to them who may have been affected by cancer, people Carter might actually care about. And Carter, showing what might be the only crack in his armour, agrees to reveal the cure to the world. This seems like a victory. Carter is going to do the right thing. Millions of lives will be saved. The family exhales. The next day, Carter holds a press conference. Cameras are rolling, the world is watching, and Carter announces a new deodorant. He lied. He looked his own daughter in the face, promised to save millions of lives, and then stood in front of the press and promoted a personal hygiene product instead. When Lois calls him demanding to know why he broke his promise, Carter's response is chilling in its simplicity. He lied. That is it. He does not explain, he does not justify, he does not apologize, he just blows her off. Peter tries to comfort Lois by saying they will get over Carter being a bad man when he appears on a magazine cover. And that is exactly what happens. Carter shows up on the cover of Forbes and everyone moves on. His wealth and public image erase his crimes. The world forgets because the world is not designed to hold billionaires accountable. This is Carter's most evil act, and it is not close, but it is far from his only one. In Let's Go to the Hop, the show reveals through a flashback that when Lois was a teenager, she was kidnapped by dangerous criminals. She pleaded with her father to pay the ransom. Carter refused. He would not pay a single dollar to save his own daughter's life, because he does not believe in negotiating with kidnappers. This is not a principled stand. This is a man who values his money more than his child. In The Fat Guy Strangler from Season 4, the show reveals that Carter's son, Patrick Pewterschmidt, was sent to an insane asylum after witnessing a traumatic event involving his mother Babs cheating on Carter with Jackie Gleason. Patrick spent decades in that asylum and emerged as a serial killer who strangled overweight men. The show makes clear that Carter's decision to institutionalize his son, rather than help him process the trauma, directly created a serial killer. According to multiple fan databases that catalogue Carter's crimes across the series, the list goes even further. Carter keeps a rancor beast on his property, like the creature from Star Wars, and uses a trapdoor to feed unwanted visitors to it. Skeletal remains on the floor of the rancor's lair suggest he has done this many times. He forces Peter to drink his own diabetic blood as entertainment. He pretends to adopt orphans, then locks toys and a dog in his car so the orphans cannot get in, and drives away while they cry as a bonding activity with Chris. The chemical waste from his company gave an entire town cancer. He burned down the Amazon rainforest. In the episode Death Lives from Season 3, we learn that Carter was so opposed to Peter marrying Lois that he offered Peter a $1 million check to break things off. This might seem like a concerned father trying to protect his daughter from an unsuitable husband, but the show has made clear across many episodes that Carter does not care about Lois's happiness. He cares about his own reputation and his image. Having a fat, unintelligent son-in-law offends his sense of class. The bribe was not about love, it was about vanity. And in Peterotica, when Peter tries to sell drugs to Meg as part of a scheme to rebuild Carter's fortune, Carter appears from behind and knocks his own granddaughter unconscious to rob her of the cannabis she just bought. He hits a teenage girl, his own flesh and blood, in the back of the head to steal from her, and he does this as casually as someone picking up a quarter they found on the sidewalk. The violence against Meg does not register as significant to him because Meg does not register as significant to him. She is not a person, she is an obstacle between him and money. And in Grumpy Old Man, an episode where Carter spends time with Peter and his friends at the Drunken Clam, we see his everyday toxicity. When Peter starts complaining about Lois by name, Carter defends her. "That is my daughter you're talking about." But when Peter rephrases the complaint without using Lois's name, describing a red-headed lady who lives in my bed, Carter immediately calls this unnamed woman terrible names and expresses sexual interest in her relationship with Peter, saying he will think about it that night. He does not actually care about respecting his daughter. He cares about the appearance of respecting her. As long as Peter does not use her name, Carter will degrade her without hesitation. This is superficiality dressed as principle. And it is a perfect window into how Carter's mind works. Everything is a transaction. Everything is about appearances. Nothing is real to him except money and power. So why does Carter rank this high and not at the very top of the list? Because Carter's evil, despite being the most consequential in terms of lives affected, is ultimately the evil of indifference rather than the evil of intent. Carter does not hide the cancer cure because he wants people to suffer. He hides it because he wants to be rich. The suffering is a byproduct, a cost of doing business. He does not take pleasure in the deaths of millions. He simply does not think about them at all. They are not real to him. They are line items on a spreadsheet. This makes Carter terrifying in a way that is different from the character who sits above him on this list. Carter is the banality of evil. He is the businessman who sees mass death as an acceptable cost. He is the corporate executive who weighs shareholder returns against human lives and picks the money every single time without losing a minute of sleep. He is not crazy. He is not delusional. He is not driven by trauma or addiction or stupidity. Carter is perfectly rational. He understands exactly what he is doing. He just does not care, and that rationality, that cold, calculated indifference to human suffering on a massive scale, makes him one of the most realistic villains the show has ever created. Because Carter is not a cartoon exaggeration, he is a slight amplification. The real world has pharmaceutical companies that have priced life-saving medications out of reach for millions. The real world has billionaires who have the resources to solve problems and choose not to because the problems are more profitable than the solutions. The real world has men like Carter Pewterschmidt who sleep perfectly well at night, while people die from conditions that could be prevented. The difference between Carter and the real-world version is that Carter has the actual cure. In reality, the evil is usually more diffuse, more plausibly deniable, more insulated by layers of corporate structure and legal protection. Carter's version is just more honest. He has the cure. He will not share it. And he feels nothing about that choice. Carter Pewterschmidt, wealthy, powerful, respected, featured on Forbes, and sitting on top of a mountain of preventable death that he built with his own hands and will never lose a moment of sleep over. He is not the craziest character on this list, but he might be the most evil, depending on how you define the word. If evil is measured by consequences, by lives affected, by the scope of suffering caused, then Carter is number one, and it is not even a debate. But evil is not just about consequences. It is also about intent, about the human darkness behind the act, about what it reveals about the person committing it. And by that measure, there is one character left on this list whose most evil act is smaller in scale than Carter's, but darker in its implications. Because it is not about money, it is not about power, it is about something much more personal and much more terrifying. If you are enjoying this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, because we have arrived at the top of the list, moving on to the most evil character in Family Guy, Stewie Griffin. Stewie Griffin is a 1-year-old baby. That sentence should not be terrifying. Babies are helpless. They cry, they eat, they sleep, they learn to walk. They are the most vulnerable people on the planet, completely dependent on the adults around them for survival. But Stewie Griffin is not a normal baby. He has the vocabulary of a British aristocrat, the intelligence of a super genius, and an obsession with killing his mother that has been a running theme since the very first episode of the show. He builds time machines in his bedroom. He constructs weapons that rival military technology. He has travelled across centuries, created clones, altered timelines, and committed acts of violence with the casual ease of someone ordering lunch. He has been voiced by Seth MacFarlane since 1999. He speaks with an affected British accent, despite being born in Rhode Island to American parents. He is simultaneously a baby learning what shapes are, and a genius who understands quantum physics. He is a would-be world conqueror and a lonely child who desperately wants someone to understand him. To appreciate why his most evil act hits so hard, you need to understand the full scope of what Stewie has done across the series. Because letting his therapist die was not his first murder. It was not even his 10th. In The Hand That Rocks the Wheelchair from Season 9, Stewie accidentally creates an evil clone of himself. Evil Stewie, distinguishable only by wearing a red shirt with yellow overalls instead of Stewie's yellow shirt with red overalls, goes on a genuine rampage through Quahog. The clone cuts off Brian's tail and forces it down Stewie's throat. He slices a woman in half to steal her car. He lures the Kool-Aid Man through a wall just so he can attack him. In the DVD version, he tracks down the bully who kicked over Stewie's sandcastle and murders both the boy and his parents. Brian eventually kills the clone by telling both Stewies to look at their feet. The real Stewie laughs at his feet because he spent half an hour the previous day giggling at them. The evil Stewie is confused by the request. Brian shoots the confused one, but as Brian and the surviving Stewie walk home, Stewie turns back toward the camera with glowing yellow eyes and demonic laughter. The show never confirms whether Brian shot the right one. In The Big Bang Theory, an episode about time travel, Stewie encounters his evil half-brother, Bertram, in Renaissance Italy. Bertram plans to kill Leonardo da Vinci to erase Stewie from existence. Before Bertram can act, Stewie asks him a question. "Hey Bertram, what is your favourite kind of bottled water? Mine is Arrowhead." And then he shoots an arrow into Bertram's head, killing his own half-brother with a pun. Brian notes, "Wow, that was dramatic." And Stewie's reaction to murdering a family member is zero. No emotion, no hesitation, just a word, play setup, and an arrow. In the 2-part special, Stewie kills Lois, and Lois kills Stewie from Season 6, Stewie finally follows through on his lifelong desire to commit matricide. He shoots Lois on a cruise ship. She falls into the ocean and is presumed dead. Stewie seizes power, gains access to a CIA supercomputer, takes control of the global power grid, and becomes president of the world. The episodes are eventually revealed to be a simulation, but the simulation was Stewie testing whether he could actually do it. And the answer was yes. And in the early seasons, Stewie runs a loan sharking operation. When Brian bets $50 on a fight and loses, Stewie comes to collect. Brian brushes it off. Stewie responds by beating Brian repeatedly, breaking his legs, shattering glass in his eyes, and setting him on fire. All over $50. This is not cartoon slapstick. This is a baby torturing a dog with the systematic cruelty of a mob enforcer. All of this context is necessary to understand why the therapy episode hits differently. And his most evil act is not the time travel. It is not the weapons. It is not the murder plots against Lois. It is not even the clone that went on a killing spree through Quahog. His most evil act is something quiet, something that happens in a single room over the course of a single conversation, and it is the most genuinely disturbing thing any character on this show has ever done. It happens in Season 16, Episode 12. The episode is called Send in Stewie, Please. It is the 300th episode of the series, and the show's creators chose to mark that milestone not with a spectacle or a crossover or a celebrity guest parade, but with something they had never tried before. An entire episode set in one room, with no cutaway gags, following one extended conversation between Stewie and a school psychologist named Dr. Cecil Pritchfield. Stewie has been sent to the school office after pushing a kid named Tyler down the stairs. The school calls in Dr. Pritchfield to evaluate him. What follows is the most revealing, psychologically complex, and ultimately horrifying episode in the show's history. Stewie starts the session the way he always operates: defensive, guarded, performing. He makes small talk, he sizes up the doctor, he positions himself as the smartest person in the room, because that is what Stewie does. His intelligence is his armour. When Dr. Pritchfield claims to know Stewie a bit after brief observation, Stewie responds by deconstructing the doctor's entire life from the objects in his office. It is an extended monologue, and it is devastating. Looking at a single vacation photo, Stewie deduces everything. The doctor is in a relationship with a younger man named Michael. There is a 26-year age gap. They met through Shakespeare recitations. Michael has no career. They have financial struggles. The expensive-looking hotel in the photo is not where they actually stayed. They went there for drinks because they could not afford a room. Michael's eyes wander toward younger men whenever they go out. The doctor notices every time. Their Facebook photo is carefully staged to project a success they do not actually have. And Stewie concludes the monologue with this: "Every time you glance at this picture, you wonder how long before he leaves me." This is not a child being clever. This is a weapon being deployed. Stewie does not just observe the doctor's life, he weaponizes every observation. He takes the most vulnerable parts of this man's existence, his fear of abandonment, his financial insecurity, the age gap he cannot close, and he lays them out on the table with surgical precision. He is telling the Doctor, "I see everything about you, and I can use all of it to hurt you." After this monologue, there is a long silence, and then Dr. Pritchfield responds with 6 words that change everything. "You seem like a very lonely little boy." And Stewie breaks, not gradually, not with resistance. He collapses immediately. "Oh my God, I am so lonely. You can see inside my soul." Everything Stewie has built, the accent, the superiority, the weapons, the world domination plots, all of it dissolves in an instant when someone sees through it to the terrified, isolated child underneath. This moment is the key to understanding everything about Stewie Griffin. His intelligence and cruelty are defense mechanisms. His British accent is a costume. His evil genius persona is a wall between himself and a world he is terrified of. He pushes people away before they can hurt him, because being alone by choice feels safer than being rejected. And in Dr. Pritchfield, Stewie has met the first person in over 400 episodes who can bypass all of those defenses, not with intelligence or force, with simple, direct empathy. The session continues. They discuss Stewie's accent. The Doctor, who is also British, does not notice anything unusual about it. When Stewie does not recognise a British pronunciation of the word controversy, the Doctor explains that British people pronounce it differently. Stewie snaps, "Piss off." His accent is so deeply embedded that even another British person treats it as natural. The fake voice has become his real voice. They discuss Tyler, the boy Stewie pushed, and Stewie confesses the truth. "I only pushed Tyler down the stairs because I like him, and I'm afraid he would not like me back. And not like him. Like him." He is not gay, he insists immediately. He becomes defensive. "This whole thing is not because I am gay, so calm down." But as the conversation continues, Stewie identifies as fluid, admits he has always been bisexual, and then realises he has technically just come out. Damn it. They discuss world domination, which Stewie describes as a fling. He treats attempted global conquest the way someone would describe an embarrassing hobby they tried once. He talks about his love of musicals and has a tantrum about not being on Broadway, singing Hamilton while fighting hiccups and snot bubbles. And then comes the moment that defines Stewie and seals the Doctor's fate. Stewie admits the truth about himself. "Everything about me is this carefully constructed persona designed to keep people at arm's length. This is not even how I really talk." He drops the British accent and speaks in a regular American voice. "This is how I talk. The accent is nothing more than an affectation, a coat of armour to get me through the day. Just an image I cultivated so I can feel special." Dr. Pritchfield says, "I do not hear a difference." Stewie is frustrated. He impersonates multiple characters to prove his voice changes. Peter, Quagmire, Brian, Dr. Hartman, Tom Tucker, Seamus, Carter, Ida, Jake Tucker. Jesus Christ. Even Roger Smith from American Dad. The Doctor still hears the same voice every time. "I am sorry, that just all sounds like the same person." This is one of the most brilliant jokes in the show's history, and it works on multiple levels simultaneously. Is Stewie's real voice actually different from his British accent, and the Doctor simply cannot hear it? Or has Stewie worn the persona for so long that his real voice and his fake voice have merged into the same thing? Is his identity so fractured that he cannot actually access who he truly is, even when he tries? The answer does not matter. What matters is what happens next. Stewie nearly commits to change. He says he is going to talk to Tyler. He is going to make friends. He is going to be a normal boy. For one brief hopeful moment, it seems like Stewie might actually let go of the persona, accept vulnerability, and become the person he could be if he were not so afraid. And then Dr. Pritchfield says, "You're finally going to be just like everybody else." Stewie stops. He asks the Doctor to say it again. The Doctor obliges. "You are finally going to be just like everybody else." And Stewie's face changes. But I do not want to be like everybody else. He puts the British accent back on. The wall goes back up. The persona returns. The chance for connection, for growth, for healing, vanishes in an instant. Because being special is more important to Stewie than being happy. Being extraordinary and alone is preferable to being ordinary and loved. This reversal is heartbreaking, but it is not his most evil act. His most evil act comes in the final minutes of the episode. Dr. Pritchfield begins having heart trouble during the session. His prescription medication sits on the desk, inches from the doctor's reaching hand. This is the same medication that Stewie identified during his earlier monologue when he was deconstructing the doctor's life. Stewie knows what the medication is. He knows what it is for. He knows the doctor needs it to survive. The doctor reaches for the medication. He cannot get to it. He looks at Stewie. His eyes are pleading. He does not say the words, but the meaning is unmistakable. Help me. Please. Stewie watches him die. He does not move. He does not reach for the medication. He does not call for help. He does not press a button or open a door or do anything that a person with basic human empathy would do when another person is dying in front of them. He watches, and he waits, and Dr. Pritchfield dies on the floor of his own office while a 1-year-old baby sits in a chair and lets it happen. After the doctor collapses, Stewie justifies it to himself. Dr. Pritchfield has seen through the facade. He saw the real Stewie, and the real Stewie is something that cannot be allowed to exist in someone else's mind. The only person who ever truly understood Stewie had to be eliminated, because that understanding was more threatening than any weapon or rival. And then, as if the universe wanted to make the moment even darker, the phone rings. It is Michael, the doctor's husband. It is Michael. I want a divorce. Stewie looks at the dead man on the floor and says, "This is not your day." Dr. Pritchfield died without knowing his marriage was already over. Stewie's deduction about Michael leaving was correct. Every cruel observation Stewie made during that monologue was accurate, and the doctor will never know it, because Stewie let him die before the truth could reach him. That night, Brian sleeps in Stewie's room, and Stewie admits quietly, "I have done something awful." But he does not elaborate. He does not confess. He carries the knowledge of what he did, and chooses to live with it, rather than face it. This is why Stewie sits at the top of this list, not because of the body count, which is admittedly lower than Carter's negligence-driven genocide, not because of the scale of destruction, which Peter exceeds on a weekly basis, not because of the criminal severity, which Quagmire arguably matches. Stewie tops this list because of what his most evil act reveals about the nature of evil itself. Every other character on this list has a comprehensible motivation. Chris is too dumb to know better. Brian is insecure. Meg was abused. Ernie is obsessed. Quagmire is addicted. Lois is suppressed. Peter is chaotic. Carter is greedy. Each of them does evil, in service of something broken, something selfish, something pathological, but something identifiable. Stewie killed Dr. Pritchfield to protect his loneliness. Not his wealth, not his power, not his freedom, his loneliness. The one thing about Stewie that is genuinely, deeply personally his was the fact that nobody understood him. And the moment someone did, Stewie's response was not relief. It was not gratitude, it was murder. Because being understood meant losing the thing that made him special. Being seen meant being vulnerable. And Stewie would rather let a kind man die on a floor than risk being ordinary. That is not cartoon evil. That is not slapstick evil. That is not the evil of a baby genius plotting world domination. That is the evil of a person who has so thoroughly built their identity around isolation that they will kill to preserve it. It is the evil of someone who recognizes their own problem, admits it out loud, comes within inches of solving it, and then chooses darkness because the light is too ordinary. Stewie knows his persona is fake. He understands his loneliness. He sees how he pushes people away. He told the doctor all of this. He was honest for the first time in his life. And then he chose to undo all of it by letting the only witness die. Stewie Griffin is the baby who proves that genius and insanity are separated by the thinnest possible line. And sometimes, in the quiet of a therapist's office, while a kind man reaches for his medicine and a child watches without moving, they are the exact same thing. That is why Stewie sits at the top of this list. Not because he is the most destructive, not because he has the highest body count, but because his most evil act was the most personal, the most deliberate, and the most human. He had the chance to be saved. He had the chance to let someone in, and he chose to let that person die instead. Because the alternative, being known, being ordinary, being just like everybody else, was worse than murder. And that is the most terrifying thing this show has ever written. So there it is, every major Family Guy character, ranked by their single, most evil act, from least to most disturbing. Chris Griffin, who watched a man get killed and asked for more. Brian Griffin, who manipulated the most vulnerable person in his household and shattered her. Meg Griffin, who was broken by years of abuse and became a monster for 3 terrifying weeks. Ernie the giant chicken, who turned a $2 coupon into a lifetime of attempted murder. Glenn Quagmire, who committed statutory rape and walked away without a scratch because his mother slept through the courtroom. Lois Griffin, who discovered she loved crime more than being a good person. Peter Griffin, who ate his disabled friend's legs and tried to marry his own son. Carter Pewterschmidt, who had the cure for cancer and let millions die to protect his profits. And Stewie Griffin, who watched the only person who ever truly understood him die on a floor because being known was more terrifying than being alone. Family Guy has been making us laugh at these characters since 1999. Over 25 years, over 447 episodes, and across all of that time Seth MacFarlane and his writers have hidden some genuinely dark human truths inside layers of absurdist comedy and cutaway gags. When you peel those layers back, you find a show that has explored greed, addiction, trauma, identity, loneliness, and moral failure in ways that most serious dramas never attempt. The comedy gives it permission to go to places that straight drama cannot reach. And the result is a cast of characters who, underneath the jokes, represent something uncomfortably real about the different ways people can go wrong. Chris represents the danger of having no moral framework. Brian represents the cruelty of self-deception. Meg represents what prolonged abuse does to a person. Ernie represents the destructive power of a grudge. Quagmire represents what happens when addiction overrides everything. Lois represents the explosion that comes from chronic suppression. Peter represents the devastation caused by stupidity plus freedom. Carter represents the evil of wealth without conscience. And Stewie represents the saddest truth of all, that sometimes the most brilliant person in the room is also the most broken, and that loneliness can become so deeply woven into someone's identity that they will destroy the only person trying to help them rather than risk becoming ordinary. The scariest part of this entire list is that the most evil act was not committed with a weapon. It was not committed with money. It was not committed with a scheme or a plan or an army. It was committed by a baby sitting in a chair, in a quiet room, watching someone die because being understood was more frightening than being alone. Every character on this list had a choice. Chris could have been horrified by the violence he witnessed instead of excited. Brian could have been honest with Meg instead of using her. Meg could have chosen therapy instead of a loofah and a gun. Ernie could have forgiven an expired coupon. Quagmire could have respected age and consent. Lois could have talked about her emptiness instead of filling it with stolen goods. Peter could have listened, just once, to the people telling him to stop. Carter could have released the cure and still been one of the richest men alive. And Stewie could have handed the doctor his medication and for the first time in his life allowed someone to really know him. They all had the choice, and they all chose wrong. Some out of stupidity, some out of fear, some out of greed or addiction or suppression or chaos. But Stewie's choice was the purest expression of evil on this list because it was the most human. He chose isolation over connection. He chose his persona over his person. And someone died because of it. That is what separates Family Guy from other animated comedies. The Simpsons gives you warmth underneath the satire. South Park gives you social commentary underneath the shock. Family Guy gives you a mirror. A distorted, exaggerated, sometimes grotesque mirror, but a mirror nonetheless. And if you look into it long enough, through the cutaway gags, and the chicken fights, and the giggities, you might see something that looks uncomfortably familiar. And that is the genius of Family Guy. Underneath the fart jokes and the chicken fights, and the giggities and the cutaway gags, there is something real. Something that, if you sit with it long enough, stops being funny and starts being true. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.